Jayson Jorgensen with you as we bring you our final edition of Husker Chat, brought to you by Acres Equipment. We are coming to you live today on our social media platforms, and we're joined by the publisher of Husker Online, Sean Callahan. Well, we all saw it Friday, Sean. That's just a tough way for the Huskers to end things under Matt Rhule. You've had a couple of days to digest this thing. Overall, your thoughts on year one for Matt Rhule?
Yeah, just a up and down year in a lot of respects and so many unpredictable things, kind of what Nebraska football's been in a nutshell the last several years. But starting with Jeff Sims not really working out, I mean, I think that kind of put the season off the tracks, at that point, and they had to figure out their quarterback, and they had injuries at quarterback and then running back injuries. But to lose 3 games by the score of 13-10, all by last second field goals, I just don't know if I've ever seen anything like that ever in any kind of football where a team lost 3 games by identical scores, identical ways. And to have an undefeated October for the first time since 2001, but then to have a no-win November to follow it up, it was definitely a tug of the emotions if you're a Husker fan to have to deal with it. And all the losses, as you know, Jason, were pretty much one-score losses this year other than Colorado and Michigan. So, I think an optimistic Husker fan's like, this is a 5-7 team that easily could have won 8, maybe 9 games, but here we are trapped in at 5-7.
We are live today with Husker Chat. If you have a question for Sean, you can certainly send that to us, and kind of like our own mailbag this afternoon, we'll get Sean's thoughts on that. What's the biggest thing you think Matt Rhule was able to accomplished in this first year outside of not getting to a bowl? That certainly was one of the big goals.
Well, I think he really does know how to build a program, a culture built for the future. This jumped out to me today. I was looking this up. 12 of the 27 scholarship freshman players saw action this year. I don't know if I've ever seen that many freshmen play. And they're really, really smart how they utilize that 4-game redshirt. Marquise Buford, they kept him at 4 games at safety. And he played more and more as the season went on down the stretch. You saw them keep Kai Whalen, edge rusher from a JUCO, at 4 games. Then James Williams comes out of nowhere, showed a lot of promise. They kept him at 4 games. So I think they've really developed wisely as far as how and when they decide to play guys. And this is a pretty good team returning next year. I mean, they have a lot of pieces back to build upon, but we know they're still missing some key pieces. They still have some key questions, particularly the quarterback position. What will that look like? Is it not Jeff Sims, excuse me. Is it Chubba Purdy? Is it Heinrich Harburg? Is it a transfer portal guy? What happens to Jeff Sims? I mean, I think that's the number one offseason question right now for Nebraska as they head into the month of December.
Do you think, or have you heard from anyone, do you think Chubba Purdy comes back, and why wouldn't he come back?
Well, there's a couple things in play there. Number one, Chubba Purdy does graduate, or is expected to graduate in December. So he's eligible to transfer again if that's the case. If he was not a graduate, this is his 4th year of college. If he's not a graduate, he wouldn't be able to transfer. So, that's why it's in play potentially at that point. And I think a lot of it is who is the transfer portal quarterback if they get one? Who is it? If it's like a no-brainer guy that, looks like he's got a clear road to the job, how will they present that with Chubba? And how will Chubba look at that? And Chubba's having surgery on his growing that we think that is expected to. So I think there's some of that as well with his future that we just don't know the answer to.
In our next couple of minutes, as we talk to Sean, if there's something you'd like to ask Sean, you can type that into us. We do have a viewer question here. They say, they ask, does Rhule make any changes to his staff? Well, he might have to if Tony White, his defensive coordinator, leaves. What's your read on that situation at this point?
Yeah, there's kind of 2 obvious ones to watch. Tony White, defensive coordinator, has been, Matt Rhule's been contacted by a search firm and fielded questions about White. San Diego State and Syracuse are the 2 jobs that he could potentially be a candidate for. The other one is Josh Martin, the tight ends coach. He's an interim head coach that stepped in for Bob Wager. Wager was fired in the summer. So what will Martin be elevated to full-time, or will they go in a new direction at tight ends coach? But White is obviously the biggest one to watch because the defense did so well at times in year 1 under Tony White, and they return a lot of guys back. And Matt Rhule has said it's got to, if you're Tony White, you got to make sure if you do take a head coaching opportunity, it's the right head coaching opportunity. And that's the $1 million question. Is Syracuse or San Diego State, if they offered him the job, is that the right opportunity that he would want to take?
If he were to leave, do you think there'd be some assistants that might follow him? And could there potentially be some players to follow him?
I have a hard time seeing it like that. I mean, number one, the assistant coaches on that staff are more tied to Matt Rhule than Tony White. Rob Dvorak played for Rhule. Terrence Knighton played for Rhule, has worked with Rhule. Evan Cooper is Matt Rhule's right-hand guy. So I think a lot of those guys that are already on the defensive staff, they're more Matt Rhule guys that Tony White's working with. Now, White brought a couple of GAs and analysts with him, and who knows? But Tony White's got a deep years of experience. I've heard nothing though, Jayson, that leads me to believe he's the leading candidate. I mean, I think naturally as Husker fans, we think everyone. I mean, we just think Tony White's it's a foregone, but I've not heard one say that he's emerged as the leading candidate. He's just a name of several names for these jobs right now. So we'll see where that goes.
How wild could this month of December be on the roster front?
Well, right now, this week, Monday through Thursday, it's player meetings. We're in a recruiting dead period. So coaches can't go on the road. They can't host recruits. All this next 4 days is coaches meeting with their teams, finding out who's in, who's out, and whatnot. Then on Friday, the 1st of December, it begins a 16-day evaluation period. So you can go out on the road and you can host recruits on campus. So it's going to get hot and heavy. The transfer portal opens on Monday, December 4th, a week from today. That's the other mile marker. You're going to see a lot of players, though, declare their intentions to enter the transfer portal before Monday, and that's already been happening here already this week.
Before I let you go, we have another question coming from YouTube. What surprised you the most about this season, good or bad? I know you were surprised just like everybody else was with all of the injuries.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things were surprising. I mean, Jeff Sims is where I'd start. Like, just how disappointing that ended up being for Nebraska, that he wasn't the guy. But again, just how closely contested the games were in the Big Ten. I look at Nebraska's 7 of Nebraska's 9 conference games. The point spread was between 1 and 7 points. I mean, that is how close this group of teams is. I'm looking on our front page here what the final lines were. They were obviously a 17.5 point underdog to Michigan, and they were a 10.5 point favorite to Northwestern, which I'm not sure that would be the case if those two teams would play right now. But every game this year, the lines were 3-1, 3-2, 7, 2.5. So just the margin, it's that much. And Matt Rhule said it this year. Every one of these games comes down to 1 or 2 key plays, and that's what happens when the spreads are that tight every week.
And you've got to look at that. You can either be glass half full or glass half empty. To me, they certainly made some progress, and they have to feel they're not that far off, especially if they can get the quarterback position fixed.
Yeah, the quarterback position's big. Is it Chuba Purdy? Is it Heiner Carberg? Is it somebody else? And that's what we don't know. And that somebody else, you'll still have to come in and win the job. And that was kind of, and I don't call this a mistake by Matt Rhule, because last spring, those guys weren't healthy. Casey Thompson was out. Logan Smothers was out. Chuba Purdy was limited at times last year. So there really was no way in the spring to stage a competition for Jeff Sims, for him to be the guy. And I think that's kind of what you have to go back to. And it's hard in August to like keep a competition going. You'd like to kind of know where you're at when fall camp opens.
Got another question here. When do the renovations at Memorial Stadium begin?
Well, the preliminary dirt work and just kind of things outside are expected to begin in the spring. Nothing major structurally, though, just kind of surveying work. Then following the 2024 football season, that's when the heavy lifting is expected to begin. Now, the better question is, how close to the money are they in terms of what they need to raise from outside funds? I believe it's $225 million they need to come up with. How close are they to that number? And can, they've said they won't begin this project until the money is accounted for. And this is a major project. I mean, this is They say it's 450, but a lot of people you talk to say it's going to go well over $600 million, which that's 4 times what the Go Big project is. And the Go Big project's been the largest project Nebraska's ever done on its campus.
All right. Well, we'll see how it all shakes out. Sean, as always, we appreciate you being here all season long, and we look forward to next year as well.
Thanks, Jayson.
You bet. That was Sean Callahan, the publisher of Husker Online, joining us for Husker Chat. Once again, we want to thank Acres Equipment, once again, sponsoring our shows throughout the season. This is Jayson Jorgensen saying so long.